This is Sleeping in Trees, the audiobook, Chapter 50, Sleeping in Trees. I am not sure if we invented this innovative approach to camping, but we worked hard to perfect it. In all the years I have related this story to others, no one has suggested that they had once even contemplated any kind of camping method quite so unusual or dangerous. In South Miami, camping was a serious challenge. It seemed that, regardless of where or when we made the attempt, moisture, insects, rodents, or some distasteful combination thereof, was determined to spoil the night. If the suffocating humidity wasn't enough, a blast of torrential rain would soak us, or a heavy morning dew would settle down and leave us damp and sticky. If insects weren't invading our tents or sleeping bags by ground, they were assaulting us by air. At some point in our quest to figure out how to camp in comfort, we concluded that the higher off the ground we were, the further away we would perhaps also be from moisture and offensive critters. We needed height. Of mountains, we were in short supply, so for us elevation meant only one thing: trees. We had some trees, so the only challenge left then was to find the right ones and figure out how to sleep in them. Around this time, we were introduced to the story of Robinson Crusoe and his incredible treehouse. In 1719, Daniel Defoe wove a magical tale of adventure on the high seas peppered with pirates, bloodthirsty cannibals, and shipwrecks. Hundreds of years later, the tale was still so inviting that the Walt Disney Company built Robinson Crusoe treehouse replicas at Disneyland in Anaheim and Disney World in Orlando. They became favorite attractions. Most appealing to me was the way the castaway slept, slung comfortably in a piece of cloth held by two pieces of rope, high above it all. In my view, there is something very secure about being wrapped snugly in a nest in a position high up, able to peer down silently on the goings-on below. Dork and I decided we would figure out how to camp in hammocks high up in trees. With a little prodding, his dad made him a hammock out of a piece of canvas and some scrap lumber he found in his garage. My mom ordered one from a company in South Carolina that handcrafted them out of cotton rope and bowed oaken battens. Whether homemade or mail order, the contraption was not the point. It was the plan that mattered. On a Saturday afternoon, in the high heat and heavy humidity of deep summer, Dork and I decided to camp in our hammocks. We rolled them up and grabbed our sleeping bags plus a few victuals, sheathed knives at the ready on leather belts that held up our baggy dungarees. We headed into the sprawling expanse of scrub woods about a mile from my home. For perhaps the first time ever, we began to look at trees in a different way to find ones that would be most suitable for sleeping among the branches. On this day, we had a new appreciation. As we strode through the scrub looking skyward, we began to speculate about how different types of trees offered the best station to secure a hammock high up. In South Miami, tree options were limited, and we were seeking serious elevation. 50, 60 feet was our minimum standard. If we were going up, we wanted way up. This requirement eliminated many trees immediately. The banyan tree, one of our favorites, had magnificent outstretched branches but was rarely over 30 feet tall. Many other tropical trees were not trees at all, but more like tropical leaf clusters. Imagine trying to attach a hammock to a banana palm. Further, tropical trees attracted tropical life of a wide and sometimes strange variety. We had dealt with giant stinging grasshoppers once beneath a banana palm, and banyans were often crawling with giant snails. Dork and I had heard from someone that even tarantulas were known to favor certain tropical vegetation. We both agreed we'd limit our search to pines. Trudging through the woods with hammocks strung across our backs, we narrowed down the possibilities to Australian pines or Florida scrub pines. There were two primary challenges. First, the tree had to have a correct distance between branches or trunks to string an 8-foot-long hammock securely. Second, we had to be able to climb the tree in the first place to string the hammock. Climbing was a serious issue. Working one's way up any 60-foot tree in sneakers with a hammock and sleeping bag slung across the back was not an easy feat. We already knew that scrambling up a Florida scrub pine was next to impossible. They were devoid of any foothold for the first 30 feet, where the branches then started to sprout. Their bark was shiny, slippery, and brittle. They were also not closely grouped, so it would be extremely difficult to string our hammocks between two of them. Australian pines were superior in that multiple trees were grouped together in clusters, and they had branches at much lower levels, but they were also notoriously flimsy and brittle. We forged through the woods that hot Saturday afternoon, crickets making their scratchy racket, and eventually Dork spotted a small grouping of Australian pines of just the right size. We began our assault. The climb was arduous, but before long we were perched high above the ground in soft pine boughs. They were swaying alarmingly in the wind. This was another surprise. We had not considered that wind blowing through wispy pines 50 feet above ground would be so destabilizing. Undeterred, we went to work lashing our hammocks. We had never done this before, so it was all a grand experiment, and probably quite dangerous. First, we had to find the correct distance between two trees that were substantial enough at the top, in our judgment, to support our weight while they pitched back and forth in the wind. Dork found a couple, and, with our gear hanging across our backs, we tied the line connecting the hammocks around the first anchor tree using a half-hitch knot. We had to spider monkey across to the second tree through the others in the stand and complete the exercise again, all while keeping our grip 50 feet up in the air. Before long, we had set our hammocks next to one another, high above the ground. Next, we had to spread our sleeping bags across the hammocks and tie down the corners so they would not simply bunch up in a wad of flannel once we crawled in. This was all a great balancing act. Without an effective way to hold them in place, the bags quickly came free. We gave up and crawled carefully into our hammocks and just used them as heavy blankets. Our high wire act was complete. Dork and I laid back to enjoy one of the most unusual of experiences. We were nestled 50 feet above the ground at dusk, ensconced in a small stand of Australian pines somewhere in the South Florida scrub. We ate American cheese sandwiches with mayonnaise and smoked Tipperella cigars, and speculated about the number of other people in the world of several billion who were doing what we were at that very moment, and concluded the head count was likely quite small, maybe none at all. The evening breezes ebbed and flowed, creating a soft swishing sound around us. Would the fragile tops of the trees hold up against the weight of our fully laden hammocks? They had thus far, and we didn't even want to consider other possibilities. We double-checked all the knots. Delighting in the swaying motion, we were oblivious to all. No one was even remotely aware of our existence in the treetops, save a mockingbird or a blue jay. We felt a great sense of accomplishment, and for a while we talked intermittently about the day, the climb, our bikes, knives, and the lack of insects. Night settled in, and we drifted into a deep, contented sleep. Strangely, we both awoke abruptly about the same time, late in the night, with the same nightmarish thought. What if we rolled over? We would be ejected from the hammocks and pitched to the ground. While we were young and limber, it was still a long way down. Anyone who has relaxed in a hammock knows that it is highly unstable. Get too close to the edge, and it flips over with frightening speed, much like the spill-off of a skateboard. It is an instantaneous event with little time to react. Luckily, Dork had extra rope. In the dark, we cut a handful of pieces and gingerly tied the sides off to nearby branches. Our wobbly hammocks were soon transformed into stable nests, safe and secure. We were both delighted and thankful that we had realized this flaw in our plan before a potentially tragic event, we drifted off to sleep once again. Just before dawn, I awoke in a bone-chilling shiver. Dork was already awake. Unable to tie down our sleeping bags properly, we had pulled them up over top like blankets. What we didn't realize at the time was that the moderate tropical breeze moving through the trees would attack us slowly from below. Hypothermia was on its way. With teeth chattering, we unzipped our bags, wrestled our way inside, and zipped them back up to full stop. I considered momentarily, if we both had succumbed, just how long we might have remained in our hidden nest before someone had discovered our mummified bodies. Wrapped in flannel, our core temperatures rose and we slipped again into a deep slumber until late morning with the sun already high and hot. Breaking camp was easier. We dropped our sleeping bags to the ground, untied our hammocks, and let them fall. Gripping just tightly enough, we slid slowly down the tree trunks. Dork and I gathered up our gear and trudged home. My mom was sitting on the front steps with our basset hound, Wrinkles. She was burning ticks off his back with a cigarette. The hissing sound and pungent odor was repulsive, as was her puffing on the same cigarette between ticks. But the method was effective. She asked us what we had been up to as we headed into the garage dragging our gear. "Just sleeping in trees," I said. I don't know if she was listening or didn't want to even imagine what that meant. There was no response. She just continued her tick removal operation. Suddenly famished, we trotted up the 3 garage steps and into my kitchen to rustle up some grub. There may not be a truer truism than the one penned by the author Thomas Wolfe. He wrote, "You can't go home again." Up next is the Sleeping in Trees epilogue, and it's called "Nor Could It Ever Again Be."